want a something figure should be muted at this time. So we don't have no background noise. Okay, I see now it's time out. At times you be sharing for 15 minutes, and then there will be a timer. You your buzzword for 5 minutes for your 20-minute timer is over. Please make sure you are muted. Begin your sharing now, and may we record your voice time.
Yes, you may.
Okay, recorders, whoever the recorder is. Okay.
So, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Thomas. Everybody calls me Tom. And I am grateful to have been asked to share tonight. I've been in the program a while. I joined in October of 1988, and I've been coming ever since then. There's a couple reasons why I've been coming for almost 32 years. The first is because I don't think I've even figured it out yet, and what the perfect meal plan, the perfect food plan is, the perfect prayer life, the perfect turnover of my will to higher power. So I'm keeping learning. I keep going through the steps, and I keep growing. So the other reason is fairly early on, like in my first couple of years. Let me back up a second. The big book. Somebody's not muted. The big book of AA, which when I started was basically the only book we had. We had a brown book, but we didn't have the 12 and 12. We didn't have a workbook. And a lot of us our sponsors had us working out of the AA 12 and 12 and the AA Big Book. And the AA Big Book was full of threats. If you stop working with us and working with other people, you will get drunk again. And then I saw it happen in OA. I saw when I came in, there were people who had recovery. There were people who were thin and were giving their pitches, and they were speakers like me, only they would hold up their pants, and their pants were twice as wide as them, and it was a very impressive demonstration of what the program had done for them. But then they disappeared, and they came back a year or two later huge again, like they were fitting in their pants again. So one of the things about my story is that I never left. I guess I learned from other people's mistakes that not to leave. I guess there's a little quote. I have no idea who said it. Smart people learn from their mistakes, and wise people learn from other people's mistakes. So at least for the purpose of me coming to this program, multiple years, multiple decades, maybe there's an ounce of wisdom that I have. So I joined. So I've been a compulsive overeater for a lot of my life, longer than my term. I'm 59. I've been here for 32 years. So if you do, you can probably figure out it took me 27 years or so to get here. But I was probably a compulsive overeater from the age of 5 or 6. That's when the pictures started showing me getting chubbier, normal looking to chubbier. And I wasn't born a compulsive overeater. It turns out you can be trained. And my mother was a compulsive overeater, and my mother trained me. This was her tool set for dealing with the vicissitudes of life. It was her tool set for eating, was her basically only emotional response to living in my house with my father, and with 4 kids. And so she used food, and she trained 3 of her kids too as well. And so how it worked, you're outside playing and you fall down and skin your knee. So there's a medical procedure for that. It's called washing it out, putting Bactine on it, putting a Band-Aid on it, and giving you a cookie and a glass of milk. And if you're having a hard time sleeping at night, you're tossing and turning, you're not sleeping, there's a medical procedure for that, and it's called a bowl of cereal. And if you're at the house and dad comes home from work grumpy and mean, the medical procedure to take care of that is to load all 4 kids in the car and drive to Baskin Robbins. So this was my mom's tool, and she passed it on to me and a couple of my siblings. And it served me, right? I had to live in the same house with a father who I now call narcissistic. I sometimes call alcoholic, but I definitely always call a rageaholic. And so we had to walk around eggshell. Basically, he wasn't always your loving, supportive father. He was your loving, supportive father 30% of the time. And then the Mr. Hyde part came out occasionally, and he was verbally violent and physically. I would say physically violent within the boundaries of what was acceptable corporal punishment in the 60s and 70s, which is different now. Okay, so this is how I became a compulsive overeater. Trained by my mother, a compulsive overeater herself. I'm not taking her inventory. She was my Eskimo into this program. She joined this program and was in it for many years, more than me. And so I knew about it whenever I finally decided to stop being in denial about my situation with food. And so the good news about my situation was I never made it to obese. I just got chubby. I got chubby, and I think that when I got chubby, some self-defense mechanism kicked in, and I went and tried to find a spiritual solution. And it turns out that in general, spiritual solutions are what's required. It's a multifold disease. There's part of it's your brain and your intellect and your inability to face reality, and part of it's emotional because you're having feelings, and there's a way to deal with your feelings, and it's the medicine of carbs. I won't just go that far. I'm not a doctor, not a nutritionist, but I can say that I learned later, like a couple of years ago, if you eat carbs, your gut releases serotonin, and that's gives you the feeling of well-being. So, I lost track of where I was. I'm talking about, so it's also a physical disease because I eat too much and I have a physical response of gaining weight, and I have the certain number of killer junkie brain cells in my head that want the serotonin and demand the serotonin, and if they don't get it, they go into craving and obsessive mode and make me irritable and discontent. It's called addiction. I have addicted brain cells, and that's part of my physical reality. And then there's spiritual. People, not everybody knows it, but we're, spiritual creatures as well. And most of what we have to do to recover the physical of this disease is on the emotional and spiritual side. And once we can start working with a higher power on the physical and working with a sponsor on the emotional, then we can, help get recovery on the physical side. So what happened to me is sometime in 1988, I finally stopped diluting myself. I had lost a lot of weight in 1987 due to no effort of my own. It just was the circumstances, which this pitch isn't long enough to go into, but I got down to a nice, healthy looking weight. And in 1988, I put it all back on. And that really cost me my delusion. It really, I said I'm not going to regain this weight, but I did. I was unable to not. gained the weight back. I was unable to eat in a manner to maintain what looked like a good, healthy body weight. So that's when I lost my ability to deny that I had a problem with food. Now, I knew about the program. My mom had brought me to a couple programs when I was in college, and unlike this meeting, there were a bunch of middle-aged or senior citizen women, and it wasn't, I didn't feel like I was right in the right club, and I didn't feel like I didn't feel the pull to go back, if you know what I mean. So I didn't go back, and I waited until I was ready, and that's how it always works. When you're an addict and you have a recovery option, you don't go until you're ready. And so in '88, I was ready. So what I did is I got a sponsor. I started calling in my food. I started working the steps, and I kept going to meetings, and that was working. And it was working. I made it up to like step 8 or 9, and my sponsor relapsed. And mistake number one was not getting a sponsor for several months. And mistake number 2 was not getting another sponsor immediately after stopping working with my first sponsor. Because collateral mistake number 2 was I kept working the steps on my own. And I'm sure I benefited, but I didn't benefit as well as I would have. Some mistake number, finally, and eventually I relapsed. I don't think everybody who doesn't have a sponsor is destined to relapse, but it's my story. And I gained the weight back, and I stayed in the program. So that's what's the opposite of a mistake? That was good choice number 2. Besides coming to OA, good choice number 2 was staying in OA and not leaving before the miracle happened. Got a new sponsor. Started working the steps again. Started calling in my food again. Worked the steps, kept going to meetings, taking direction from my sponsor. And I lost the weight again down to a healthy body weight and looked good. I did relapse again after that. Multiple things went on to have that, but mostly I got tired of that sponsor. Mostly after like 5 years with that sponsor, I'd heard all his stories multiple times. I'd heard all his opinions multiple times, and I started traveling for work and had less control over my food. And I was calling him 3 times a day because I'd call him, okay, I'm going to have this for breakfast, and I'd call him, okay, I'm having this for lunch. I think just talking to him 3 or 4 times a day, a lot, I just got tired of him. And in the end, I somewhere in there in the late 90s, I got separated and divorced, and I totally maintained my abstinence through that. Because one of my characteristics is when life gets hard, I know I'm going to have a problem being abstinent, and I know I'm going to have a problem wanting to medicate myself. So when life gets tough, I always up my program. I always call more people, go to more meetings, write more. So a lot of people, when they're not happy and work or family or whatever goes to shit, they succumb. But I didn't. What I did is I made it through my divorce, and I made it with this guy long enough to get tired of him, and that's when I relapsed again. So not, and then I got another sponsor, and I got tired of him a lot faster, but he told the same story. He had fewer stories, but anyway, it's all good. I worked I joined another program in the late 90s because the relation issues I was having that caused me to get a divorce, and it's all good. I'm working through the steps. I finished working through the steps about 6 times. And I feel like I'm in a good place working on living in steps 10, 11, and 12. I have lost weight. I am maintaining some weight loss. And I can always be skinnier. I don't know if anybody has that experience. There's what's that other saying? You can never be too rich, too thin, or there's another one, too rich or too thin. So although I'm at a healthy body weight, I could be thinner and look in the mirror and be okay with it. So one of the things that happened to me almost 15 years ago, I have 15 years of abstinence, and actually, I don't. August 11th, I'll have 15 years of abstinence. One of the things that happened is like
5 minutes.
Thank you. I got a new sponsor, the third good sponsor. Worked the steps again. Was more diligent with my food. But the real difference was I stopped arguing with Dr. Silkworth in the Big Book. In the Big Book, Dr. Silkworth says alcoholics have an allergy to alcohol, that they drink it and they're bodily and mentally different from their fellows who, when you get drunk and throw up on yourself and wake up in a puddle of your own vomit, that you say, oh, I don't really want to do that again, and you stop. But an alcoholic doesn't, because he's got the different junkie brain cells, the different addict brain cells. And what I figured out was that there's certain foods that treat my brain cells the way alcohol treats an alcoholic's brain cells. And eating 3 meals a day doesn't have to be a risk. If I just ate broccoli and lean chicken and nothing that turns into glucose real fast and gives me a serotonin spike like I like, I get out of the cycle of craving and obsession, and I still feel satisfied and full. So I made the list of foods that turn on my brain cells, and I stopped eating those. I went through the withdrawal, and I started calling myself abstinent again. And that was beautiful. And that's one of the things I did, was figuring out that alcoholics drink coffee and water and Gatorade, and I don't have, but they don't drink beer, wine, and martinis. And I can eat broccoli and quinoa and cheddar cheese, but I don't eat cookies, cake, and ice cream. So the other thing I started doing about 15 years ago, after you've been in the program a while, and after you have some recovery, it's time to start looking at the traditions. We read them every week, but when we're just trying to battle our addiction, we don't pay much attention to them because they don't actually help us battle our addiction. But once we've battled our addiction more successfully and we can be of service to other people, the traditions start being more valuable to us. And what I did is I started being of service at levels above the meeting level, at the intergroup level, and then at the regional level. And one of the jobs I did at the intergroup level was to be a World Service rep. So in my OA program, I did multiple levels of service, and that's one of the things that kept me abstinent, honestly. The defense against a chocolate chip cookie, if I'm just going to give up a year of abstinence, is nowhere near as shaming as walking into a board meeting and needing to resign. There's a lot more self-defense. And so being of service at a higher level really helped me. Now, I had to be abstinent for a while. I had to get abstinent, be abstinent for a while, and be in the program a while before those, the traditions started talking to me. But now I like the traditions and I like the steps. So I think I'm running out of time, but I just want to say I'm grateful for this program. I believe if it, it did or did not save my life, but it certainly gave me a much better life. Some days I feel like it saved my life, but other days I don't know how. Because I came in young, I never got obese. It's given me a great life. I still don't have as much serotonin as I'd like, but I don't. I'm not completely devoid of it. All right, thanks for letting me share.